Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We're excited to be with you today for a session focused on a challenge and an opportunity, something that dealerships face in some form, right? Which is getting F&I, sales, and fixed ops working together as a team. My name is Brad Hartwell. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships here at the JM&A Group, where we work with our largest clients as well as our OEM partners.
Good morning. Good morning, Brad. Good to be here with you. I'm Jonathan Jordan. I'm the Director of Performance Development Services here at JM&A, and our team is focused on helping dealers in all aspects of their business really connect the dots between departments. And because what we know is when teams are aligned, everything works better. It drives to a greater customer experience, leading to greater profitability and customer retention, and just a much more consistent experience, not only for your consumers, but for your employees as well. So happy to dive in this morning and talk about this. It's something we both care deeply about. And if you're listening, thank you for being here.
Yeah, great, Jonathan. Thank you. And our goal today is very simple, right? We'll talk about where dealerships get stuck and when departments are misaligned. And then more importantly, what we can start doing as leaders to change that, right? And this isn't just a theory. This is happening throughout every organization for the most part, day to day. So we'll walk through some of the current, the common profitability challenges, why alignment is so difficult, and practical steps to help your teams operate and with more clarity and coordination.
Yeah, and I'll say this isn't a new issue. This isn't something like, oh, this is late breaking. Like there's issues with alignment in
Yep.
businesses. Like no, like this is something that everyone struggles with, and some have really been focused on it for years, and there's still some challenges there, but they're getting better. Others are really just starting to go down this path, and we work with a lot of dealers that are in a lot of different places. But what we hope to give you today is just a few little things that like you can walk away, get off this call and go right back to your leadership teams in your stores and say, hey, there's a couple things a couple small tweaks we can make that we think that will really help us be better aligned. And, if you walk away with one or two of those things, I'd say we would have done our job today.
100%. And I think what we take for granted oftentimes, Jonathan, is just, those little changes, right? Like every journey starts with a step, right? And it's kind of funny that you start making a few tweaks and adjustments, right? You see some really positive results from that. And then it opens up the floodgate for all the other things that, we could change, that we could, work together on, that we could really, especially when it's guest centric, right? Where we can really start getting some momentum and really, not overhaul, but really have an evolution of the process. Because we know that when sales, F&I, and fixed ops are working together, it's an amazing experience for our customer, right? Because when we don't, there's always that missed revenue opportunity, wasted time, and our CSI scores often reflect that, right? Where they feel like they're bounced around, they have a good experience with one manager, not another, right? And it unfortunately has an effect on the entire overall experience. So, Jonathan, from when you think about misalignment, right? We'll just take ABC Motors, right? From your perspective, what do you generally see as the heart of the misalignment?
I mean, I really think it comes down oftentimes to motivation, to goals, to vision, and really, and I'll dive in a minute, but if you think about like how you're managing your business, and if you're a general manager or a dealer, and how you're looking at your business, are you looking at each individual department, which is important? I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but also are you looking at everything holistically and how those work together? So like, let's dive into that a minute. Like you've got a sales department. And if I ask a salesperson, like, what are you most focused on today? They're probably going to tell me how I can get as many cars across the curb, by the end of the month as I can. And
Yep.
if I then walk into the F&I office and I ask the F&I manager, like, what are you most focused on today? It's how can I get my PVR up as high as it can be? How can I drive my service contract penetration? And then if I walk into the service drive and I talk to a service advisor, what are you focused on today? And it's like dude, I got a waiting room full of customers. I got to keep my customer pay RO dollars up. Um, I've got to keep the techs happy. Like I got all these kind of different things coming at me. And oftentimes those things aren't necessarily all aligned. And when we look at that, it's obvious kind of what drives kind of misalignment is different employees, different teams are focused on different things, which they should be, but are they also focused on kind of the overall strategy and overall goal of the dealership? And that's hard. Like that's hard to do, and still drive kind of performance in each one of those departments.
But it can be done,
For
right?
sure.
Like we
Yeah.
both agree it can be done. I mean, you go into some of the most successful stores we have, right? You have business managers, right, sitting at the desk side by side with sales managers, right? And if a sales manager is working a few deals, F&I is still waiting for those to close. They could be out making sure that they greet with a salesperson, a guest before they leave, right? Maybe they did a test drive, aren't ready to see numbers yet. We should be working together and completely aligned between, the entire variable side, right? We'll get to fix, but just in working in conjunction with each other. So it's a very smooth, easy handoff, right? We preach all the time about business managers working not only at the desk, but introducing themselves even before the deal is consummated, right? So once that transition happens, they've already had a chance to meet the business manager as the customer, and they're already getting comfortable with them, which makes that process, especially with an interview, that much more seamless, right? And I think a lot of times we historically, I think I'm gonna go there. I think it's a historical challenge where we've created these silos that have been there for a long time in our industry, and they've always just kind of been there, and we've allowed it, right? And I think we've also done that in the fact of, I've had a lot of dealers, when I've met with them, bring me into the roles and responsibilities of each manager, right? And it's interesting too, because even those, right, if you're looking at a job description for every associate in the store, it's very siloed there, right? Versus having language around, here's how we work together as a management team, here's your responsibilities of communication with other departments, here's the set meetings we have to kind of walk through challenges and operational efficiencies and creating those. And I think too, and I know, we'll probably touch on this later, but with those same roles and responsibilities being siloed, so have compensation plans, right? Historically in our business. And so everybody has their own, kind of siloed approach of what success looks like to me without it being a very holistic approach to what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, totally agree. And I like let's unpack that for a minute. When we think about like compensation plans,
Yeah.
um, or pay plans, as I like to call them. Brad uses big words sometimes.
Look at
Um,
my glasses, my jacket. I'm trying to, really put on my best show for you today.
um, it is are they aligned? And like, did you develop your sales pay plan maybe individually on your own, your F&I pay plan, maybe individually your own or in conjunction with an F&I provider, and then other pay plans throughout your store? Have you ever like put them all beside each other and said, do these things all line up?
Yep.
Or am I creating behaviors through pay plans that actually contradict each other?
Yep.
And I just recent example, in my head is, we were working with a dealer group, and they were trying to roll out a new process in F&I. And when we looked at the F&I pay plans versus the sales pay plans, we realized that what got the salesperson paid actually negatively affected the F&I manager and vice versa. And so if that's the case, that's going to naturally create friction, right?
Yep.
Because now we're pulling not only are we pulling our employees, but we're pulling the customer in a couple different directions throughout the process, and it doesn't feel good. It does, with that said, I think we have to like address the elephant in the room a little bit too, which is, and Brad, I'm curious your thoughts on it, is I said earlier, like salespeople are focused on getting cars across the curb. F&I managers are focused on driving their PVR up.
Yep.
We want them to be focused on those things. Like, I'm not saying like, this is this whole like, oh, kumbaya and everybody's gonna, work to do the exact same thing, because they do have distinct roles with distinct goals. But how do we, make sure there's alignment and people are actually helping each other out to achieve those goals, as opposed to kind of pulling apart?
Yeah. And I think it always comes down, if we look at our careers, right, and all the challenges that we've faced when it comes to, where breakdowns happen, 90% of the time it's because of one reason, right? And that's communication. And I think, a lot of times, if you look at, an average store, right, stores I've worked in, right, and been a part, leadership teams I've been a part of, right, it's a variable meeting where we're just meeting with the sales managers and the salespeople, right? And we're just talking about how many appointments we have today, what specials we have, what vehicles we want to focus on, right? And it's just a very kind of siloed approach. And that's kind of a common theme, right? Versus interdepartmental meetings where, we kind of pull everybody together and really, work to solve challenges. And, we're all of the mindset of how do we make this experience better for our customers, right? It's all about guest experience and, what ways and what challenges can we solve, as department leaders to limit those, reduce them, to maximize efficiency, to maximize turn rate, whether it's in the purchase process, F&I, or service. And then how do we monetize those efficiencies to our advantage, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about maximizing our revenue as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you talked about the the consumer experience, and I can't like harp on that enough. Like, take time to really go through your experience.
Yeah.
And when I say that, start from the very beginning. Start from, a Google search of your dealership, and go through that digital experience, the showroom experience, the sales, the F&I, the parts, the service, the every touch point that consumer can have, and really understand what your consumers are experiencing, and does that feel aligned? And if that doesn't feel aligned, there's probably, some deeper issues. But want to jump into, we said, hey, what are some things I can do, kind of right off the bat, today? So like the one practice I like to use is like, what are good questions to ask to know, hey, do I have good alignment? So first, like, just look at your customer experience and understand that. But then if there is misalignment there, like, dig a little deeper. And like, this sounds so simple, but like, do your teams know each other? Like, and I know that sounds crazy, but a lot of times a dealership could have, 100 people, sometimes a lot more than that, depending on the size of the store, working in the store. Do your teams actually know each other? Do your salespeople know your service advisors? Do your service managers know your sales managers, and et cetera? Because relationships are important when it comes to alignment. And, actually, knowing each other, having a little bit of a personal relationship, just something as simple as knowing people's names and knowing a little bit about them is super important. Do your managers meet regularly? Like, is this something, when was the last time all your managers in your store were in the same room? And if it's more than a couple of weeks ago, I would encourage you to change that, to have some alignment, so they know what's going on in the different departments. How are they doing with their KPIs? What problems are they trying to solve? What are they really good at? Like, there should be communication across teams to know that. And when you think about those things, do your teams know each other? Are they meeting regularly? Are they discussing wins and problems and opportunities? Because if the answers to those are no, I would say that's kind of contributing to those silos from each department remaining. And you've really got to be proactive to try to build those bridges, because if you're not, people just get into their day. They get into their day. They're focused on what they need to focus on. They got big jobs. They're busy, and these things don't happen unless there's leadership actually really pushing and reinforcing that.
100%. And a lot of intentionality, right? Of this is the North Star of what we want to try to get to as an organization. And I think a lot of times, I've seen it in the past where managers are waiting for somebody else to bring it to them, right? So they're waiting for the dealer or the general manager. And I've always pushed back on that thought and thought that every person and every manager in every department that we've talked about so far is a stakeholder, right? And so any of these changes we're talking about now can be led. And just a small example of that, right? When I was a used car manager, is I would constantly be having this kind of a silent friction with the service manager, right? Because he'd go through the car, bring me an RO full of, do you want to do this work? I would
More
pick and choose
tires,
what
brakes, and a new
everything.
windshield
Yeah,
and everything every time.
correct. He wanted to, make it a brand new car, right? And then it would delay. We'd get into these kind of locked horns, discussions, and it would delay getting the cars to market. And we all know that the longer the car is sitting and the longer it takes to get to market, the less gross we're going to make on that car, right? And so then it comes down to, okay, well, how do I start meeting with my service manager 2 to 3 times a week, right? And how do we work through all these problems we're having, right? And it goes the same thing with, new car, right? Because it could have to do with the trade, right? Of putting new car deals together. But then when you think about it, all three of us, whether it's the used car manager, the new car manager, and the service manager, we're all in the same ship of trying to, increase the efficiency, increase our gross profit, right? And just work better together. And then F&I is absolutely a key critical component of that too. So how much time are we spending with each department? And are you a catalyst for making those meetings happen, or are you waiting for somebody else to bring it to you? Right? Because the big picture is, how do we all pull together, row in the same direction, right? And improve our operational efficiency where it's a guest centered experience. 100%.
I to- totally agree, and it's I do want to like because I think you just outlined absolutely like what it needs to be, but like what are and we've talked a lot about communication.
Yep.
Want to think about like what else? What? Because that sounds so simple, right? Just communicate. Like
Yeah.
what else is there?
I think it's an understanding of. I remember I had a leadership coach once, right? And this is, I don't know, 8 years ago, and I was working on trying to be more organized, right, and efficient, right, and really kind of have a streamlined game plan of all the things I needed to accomplish and a prioritization of those things. And he's like, "Where would you say you are right now on a scale of 1 to 10?" I said a 3. Okay. And he's like, "Well, what's your goal 6 months from now?" I said a 9. He goes, "That's not going to happen. I just want to, pop your balloon right here. It's not going to happen." He's like, "What you should be focused on is how do you get from a 3 to a 4, right? And then once you're at a 4, how do you go from a 4 to a 5, and so on and so forth, right?" And so, to me, I think it all comes down to, right, having a plan, right, having a goal of what you're trying to accomplish, right, making sure that your key stakeholders are involved. And then, two, I think gaining and looking at resources to help you do that, right? If I think of why we've had success at JM&A over, the over 4 decades of experience, I think it comes down to dealers are looking for a partner that has experience and proven results and being able to work with a dealership or a group across all departments, right? Because what we're trying to do with anything is improve efficiency, improve communication, right? Centered on the guest experience and drive profitability. And I think one thing is where we've talked about, I know we've called them silos, right? I'm going to call them walls just because I'm more of a crayon type person, Jonathan, even though you're more kind of a quill pen guy. But I think a lot of times what we've had to really solve for is how do we bring the walls down enough to where we can get all departments communicating, right? Addressing challenges head on, working together to solve for these items, right? Building something out that's long term, and then running at a much faster pace, and then kind of having that it's your ship mentality of when anybody recognizes a kink in the process, let's bring it up, let's work through it, let's make sure everybody's on the same page communication wide, and let's just move forward with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's having the right people kind of in your camp working with you to help accomplish those goals. And whether those are people who are on your team or partners that you work with, having that kind of coaching mentality, but a coach who's willing to kind of sit in the press box with you and look at it from, from 1,000 feet, but also somebody who's willing to kind of get on the field and get in the game and roll up their sleeves and really help you address these, challenges is just so important, because this is hard, and it's you need a lot of brain power and a lot of experience and on your team. And I think for a lot of dealers, having some external partners at the table can really help accomplish the goals that they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, right? Every top performing CEO, athlete, right? No matter what expert you are in your field, right? And no matter what business you're in, most likely you have coaches, right, to help you. Because the hard part is you're always kind of you're in the weeds, like we've talked about, you're in your own silo, and it's kind of hard oftentimes to see, the big picture of like where all the breakdowns are, what's holding you back, and getting the feedback and the coaching and kind of the collaboration of unlocking some of those things and really moving on to success at a next level, right? And then understanding a longer path of what is the next level from there. Again, that 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6 kind of outlook.
Yeah.
And so I think kind of in closing, right? Because we want to be respectful of everybody's time. I think I would be asking myself, one, are my pay plans aligned across departments, right? Are we preventing ourselves just by our own, roles and responsibilities and compensation plans, or are we misaligned? And what does that look like? And do your processes encourage collaboration or competition? Right? Are we all trying to compete because new cars up? Great. Well, new cars suffered, but I'm pounding my chest because used car was great. Well, new car may have suffered, right? Because I was trying to hold out and maximize and buy cars at the lowest price and hurt service because I was declining work. So it maximized my gross, right? So what are all those impacts interdepartment? And then two, really what resources do I have internally and externally really to start understanding where these breakdowns are and have a partner to really help me work through them, and getting my associates aligned to that vision so we can start working through, you know, creating a world-class guest experience.
Yeah. It's Brad, I can't, something you just said, that collaboration versus competition. And I think there's like a healthy balance there, right? And
Yep.
that we have to have, because competition is not necessarily bad, but too much leads to friction.
Right.
And so, you know, I know we're kind of beating this issue to death, but pay plans, processes, um, are you really looking at them holistically, or are you looking at them individually? And really take some time to sit down with the key players, with your key partners, and walk through those things to make sure that you do have alignment. It's time well spent. These are conversations we have every day here at JM&A. We talk to dealers about them all the time, and when we see that alignment, we see results, and results in the experience, results in profitability. Start with one thing, and just I challenge everybody, on this call. We're getting to the end of a month. We're about to start a new month in August, and if you're not regularly meeting with your department leads, if that's not part of what you do, start off in the first couple days of August and put that on the calendar. Create the space to do that, and really have an open conversation about your business, about your processes, about your consumer experience, with all those leaders in the same room. And I promise you, good things will happen from that.
No doubt. We always talk about this isn't the car business, this is a people business, right? And we're so passionate about it. I know we're coming to an end. We could talk about this for 4 more hours, right? But I love what you said, right? And you add what we think are the best and the brightest that are attracted to the automotive industry, right? And then adding on effective communication, I think you can create a home run in a world class organization. So, want to just say thank you for your time, everybody. You'll be receiving a follow up email, with this recording and some additional tools to help you succeed. And in the meantime, please check out, little plug, shameless plug, Jonathan. Check out the JM&A Dealer Consulting Services page, which we have the link live in this chat. And again, we know you guys are busy. We know you have a lot on your plate. We want to thank you from the heart for taking time to be with us today. And here's to stronger alignment and better results.
Yeah,
Have a
Brad,
great day.
great conversation. We love this industry. We love dealers. We love helping dealers drive their strategies forward and creating better experiences for their customers and their employees.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that our industry and the dealers that are part of it are the best they can be, and would love to help in any way we can. So please feel free to reach out, whether it's just a conversation about what's going on in your store or what's going on in the industry. We'd love to have it with you, and any way we can help, please feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Great way to end this out. Thanks, Jonathan. Great being with you today.
Thanks, Brad. We'll see you.